Welcome to the Making Sense of Martech podcast, where we interview leaders and put them in the hot seat. I'm Jacqueline Freedman, founder of Monarch and global head of advisory for the Martech Weekly. Let's dive in and meet Jessica Vogol. A little bit about her first. Jessica is the former CMO of OfferFit, which is now part of Braze, where she led AI-driven personalization and decisioning for enterprise SaaS. She's a seasoned B2B marketing leader with prior executive roles at NARMI and nearly 8 years at Movable Ink, where she built out the marketing team, led high-impact event programs, and championed personalization at scale. So to start us off, welcome. I'm so
Thank
glad.
you. I'm so excited to be here.
Glad to have you. And so we're going to begin with a few quick questions to warm these things up. Consider this the pre-header to our main message. So rapid fire. What was your first MarTech tool you ever used?
MailChimp.
Ooh. I mean, I think that's a really
Probably.
solid entry point for most folks. It was one of my
Yeah.
first too. What's the one marketing tactic you cannot live without?
I think the one thing that I cannot live without as an enterprise marketer is account-based marketing, the account-based experience. I think that it's so unbelievably effective and important.
Amazing. Yep. I'm a big fan of ABM. The strategy, the tools, got some question marks.
Oh, 1000%.
What is one MarTech tool you think is overrated?
So I don't want to name names, but I'll say that I think there's intent data in some cases can be overrated and vary pretty widely in terms of how it works.
Agreed. I'm a big fan of signals. However, they are signals.
Yes.
They're suggestions, not answers. What's your AI red flag? What makes you just instantly skeptical?
If someone can't explain what type of machine learning it is or how the AI that they're using actually works or that they're trying to sell actually works.
Yes, I cannot wait for us to demystify some of the AI mumble jumble.
I think in the period that I'm in right now, just figuring out what are the other things that I want to pursue. Is that writing? Is that, pursuing some creative interests outside of doing so in the marketing capacity?
Amazing. All right, last rapid fire, but it might not be the most rapid fire of questions. Who is someone you admire, whether professionally or personally?
I'm a huge fan of Sally Krawcheck, who was the CEO and founder of Ellevest. She wrote an amazing book called Own It several years ago. And there's one quote: the most important conversations about your career are happening when you're not in the room. And that has stuck with me, for the decade plus since I've heard it. So I admire her a lot.
Yeah, she's amazing. I'm a big fan of Elfest. So let's set the stage. Because you came from OfferFit and all of these huge personalization companies like Movable Ink as well, real personalization, there's a lot of talk.
Mm-hmm.
What is your working definition of it, especially in 2025? Like, how do you know when it's working? What actually is it? And it's not my first name. I know that.
Yeah. So I think, this is going to sound corny, but real personalization is in the eye of the beholder. If you or I receive a message or, some sort of marketing from a company that makes us feel like, wow, they know me and they value me for who I am, I think that is what I would consider real personalization. There have been so many different iterations of the term of like hyper personalization and real-time personalization. And I mean, I think there's probably 20 different jargony words that all
Ad
mean the same
nauseum.
thing. But I think that is one of the things. David Edelman wrote this in his book about personalization in the age of AI. It's that really that moment that you create a connection with someone that they're like, okay, this company actually does know me and cares to personalize this experience for me.
I love that. And I agree entirely. I think it's such an overused term, and every vertical or business type, it means something different. It's creepy for some, it's amazing for others.
Absolutely.
And so we like to, demystify some things around here. And so what's the most BS thing you've heard in an AI marketing pitch recently?
Recently, I'd say kind of have to laugh at how much people are bringing up agentic and agents. Like in the past 6 months, the use of the term has exploded. George Katrian, who was the CEO of OfferFit and now is at Braze, gave a really helpful explanation on one of our webinars that agentic is essentially borrowing a term from reinforcement learning where you're prompting a system to do something versus reinforcement learning agents, which are, actioning and decisioning. I don't think anybody really cares to know the difference anymore. I think many companies are just kind of throwing agentic and agents. I've seen people saying like, I'm hiring an intern to build agents to do this. I think more people are using the term than actually have any idea what it means.
I agree. And I think that's also true of the term AI
Yes.
as well. I mean,
Yeah.
my inbox, my spam specifically inbox and LinkedIn DMs are just full of AI pitches.
Oh my gosh.
Every day.
Yeah,
It
it's
is a
insane.
problem.
Hmm. I have a
So, oh, go ahead.
funny connected. This was several years ago. I was speaking with AI founders, and they were using some very jargony words to explain the kind of tech. And rather than explaining what it was basically, well, we understand it, and marketers just need to know that we're really smart and we get it, and that's okay. And I think that has stuck with me too.
Whew, enrages me a little bit. It makes my blood boil. Well, speaking of just this general rush to AI everything, speaking of marketers being smart, what's one marketing problem that you think shouldn't and or couldn't be solved with AI?
I think as marketers, whether we're working in technology or brand or anything else, any other practice, we have this job because we like to be creative and we like to be strategic. And I just don't think that that's ever something that is going to be, I mean, I never say never. I would find it really hard for AI to produce something that's really creative or strategically different. By their very nature, they're just training on other people's work and other people's data. And then unfortunately, now they're also training on other AI. So I just don't really think that creative and the strategy is ever something that's going to be effectively done by AI.
Yeah, to your point, I see it as it's the average of all of the sums.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean it's bad. It's a good starting point,
Mm-hmm.
but
Sure.
that
Yeah.
humanity
Right.
is never going to be fully
Yeah.
replaceable, in my
And I
opinion.
think a part of what really makes people connect with your brand is like feeling that moment of connection. And I think people have also gotten very smart about being able to detect what is AI and what isn't.
Oh, yeah. I think brand marketing is so understood. It's
Mm-hmm.
not valued in the way it should be
Mm-hmm.
because that is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you do is built on if someone knows who you are and or what you do without even being prompted.
Yeah.
Speaking of AI not being able to replace our humanity, there was a recent study coming out of MIT suggesting that people who lean on AI too early may end up with less creative, more generic work, kind of like what we were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Do you worry that faster testing tools, like what OfferFit was bringing to the table, could that actually make some marketers lazy? And how do we
Mm-hmm.
make sure we avoid that
Mm-hmm.
potential
Yeah.
trap?
So I think that's a great point. I don't necessarily think that AI testing tools and some of the other tools that people are using that are just automating something that you would have to do that is not really applying too much creativity, just doing it faster. I think that that is at its very nature, right, the purpose of machine learning and now this AI. I do think that using generative AI too much is potentially going to dumb down the work that we're all doing. I also think that there's a risk of that in education. Like they say high school and college students are not necessarily seeing the value in gaining knowledge when they feel like they can, use ChatGPT to answer all of their questions. So I think that yes, it's absolutely a concern. I think in our professional lives, in our personal lives, I think the biggest power of AI is when it's just automating those tasks and kind of you're still in control as the marketer and the brand.
Oh yeah, same page. I mean, there's a significant number of educators who are putting in almost kind of Easter eggs in the white font so that
Mm-hmm.
when a student
Oh,
prompts that it will include it because they'll make it state like make sure this
mm-hmm.
is included in the
Yeah.
final, and they're clearly not even reading the work, and so
Mm-hmm.
it,
Yeah.
it can definitely be used for amazing things and
Mm-hmm.
for not so great
Yeah.
things.
One of the things that I observed in hiring for a role not too long ago was many people clearly used ChatGPT for the exercise because the results were the exact same for so many. And in some instances, the
Wow.
people had like, this reflects a X, Y, and Z, kind of the prompt.
Yep.
But I think that's just where, like, if that becomes our first instinct, we are going to continue to lose knowledge and the ability to be creative.
Okay, so OfferFit had a very bombastic, bold statement saying that A/B testing is dead. I want to hear if you've expanded upon that idea and what's
Mm-hmm.
your argument for why
Mm-hmm.
marketers need to move on from the typical A/B test.
Yeah. So the OfferFit's tagline for a very long time was A/B testing is dead. I'll talk a little bit about the evolution of that. But I think that the main challenge with A/B testing is to really reach statistical significance on one test takes so long, especially if you don't have a ton of different customer data, that really by the time you're coming to a conclusion, the situation may have changed. One of my favorite brand marketers, Steph Work from Paramount, mentioned in a talk that I saw at an event. She said, basically, when you discover send time optimization, it is immediately moot. And so I think that that is the power of AI testing, which was you're able to run, thousands, millions of experiments on all different types of data points. But we shifted towards a messaging around AI decisioning because we were not only kind of running the experiments, we were also serving up the winner and actioning and deciding this is the best channel, timing, message, offer, bidding price for Jacqueline versus Jessica. So that's really why we shifted towards that. So definitely value experimentation, but I think the way that marketers are doing A/B testing today just does not scale. And I think many would agree.
That makes sense. And also, I get the evolution of that tagline because it is kind of fun to say
Yeah.
A/B
We're like,
testing
oh,
is
and
dead.
ABs don't be like a dinosaur. But then I think it's kind of like, but then also we're doing something with it. We're not just kind of telling you who wins the test or what wins the test.
Exactly. And kind of building off that, how much of today's AI marketing do you actually think is just glorified rule engines, if then, or else in disguise?
I think that there's many types of machine learning that marketers are using are most likely just rules engines. I spoke about this at a conference a couple of months ago, but when we've talked about next best action, I'm not naming a product, but just an approach, that really is just creating dynamic rules engines, whether they're very complex or just more, kind of broader segments. So I think that that is probably something that many of us are seeing, the same segmentation that we were doing in Marketo 10 years ago, but a little bit smarter. And I think that that still doesn't address what the biggest bottleneck is too, which is, okay, I've learned this, or I have now 100 micro segments. What am I actually going to do with them? How am I going to market to them differently? How am I going to connect with them based on what I know about them?
Yep, that makes sense. It's actually like, how are you going to action differently
Yeah.
and do something about
Yeah.
it? Because
It's
it's
like the
amazing to
rules are
have.
the easy part.
Yes, the rules, the guardrails, but it's actually the follow through and
Mm-hmm.
continual follow
Mm-hmm.
through. Okay, because you're at Movable Ink, and then of course OfferFit, personalization is just kind of the foundation to both of those products in
Mm-hmm.
particular. So, what's one thing you believe about personalization, maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
that you now think is totally wrong?
I might answer this question in a weird way, but there's things that I experienced about personalization, 10 years ago and 5 years ago that probably were true then, but aren't now. And at that time, I think there was a lot of novelty to just the fun part of personalization and feeling known, even if you weren't necessarily getting value. I always talk about, this is my badge of honor, that my Dunkin' Donuts year in review was used as the email in our presentations, had gone like
Amazing.
600 times or something. There was a lot of the surprise and delight and novelty, and that was enough for people to have, that catalytic moment where they connected with the brand and they're like, this is so cool, this is so fun. As it gets smarter and smarter, and as it becomes more and more table stakes, I'll give Movable like a ton of credit. Their real-time content was incredible. Many other vendors entered the space. A lot of the ESPs and marketing clouds built similar things. So it really needed to evolve. And how they did so was just bringing in a lot of individual customer data and attributes. But I think that now we're in a space where, everyone expects, like, of course you're going to personalize this to me. If I get an email with, I don't know, products that I've never looked at, I'm almost insulted at this point.
Yep,
Or a category
rightfully.
that I've never looked at. I'm like, you should know who I am. Do you
It's
know who I
true.
am? No. So I think that that's where just the expectations are changing and evolving so quickly. I think that people still want that value exchange, but I think we know more now that you have a ton of data on me, whether or not I want you to. So what are you doing with it to really provide me value?
For sure. Special shout out and RIP to Rebel Mail and that
Yes.
acquisition doing
Oh,
nothing.
yes.
Makes me so sad. To the earlier point, you were speaking with certain founders who are like the CTOs, the techie folks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you think marketers really understand how AI works, or do they just trust the output?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe what's the difference between a great marketer and a decent marketer?
Yeah, I definitely think that no marketer probably, or few marketers probably understand everything about AI and how it's used in marketing, myself included. I'm not saying I don't. I'm saying I don't know everything that there is to know,
Does
but I think that
anyone
it's,
know
yeah.
everything?
George and Victor. No, I think that really for marketers, they need to focus on going deeper on a few tools or types of AI and machine learning rather than trying to understand every single tool. We were auditing our entire tech stack, And we had to look at, of the 30 vendors that we were using, probably more, which had AI. If you had asked me without going into their tool and documentation, I probably would have told you 20% have like real AI features. All of them, every single tool, when we went through the audit, touted AI features or upcoming AI features. So I think that that's kind of the challenge. Is it's hard to learn what AI is in every tool. It's about finding the value of, like, what do you think is actually going to have an impact, building the strategy, getting your data science team on board, because there's going to be a massive disconnect if you don't, and then focusing on that.
Agreed entirely. So you kind of mentioned really understanding machine learning. Would you say that, or maybe a different technical concept, would be really important for marketers to understand if they're really serious about, obviously they're already using AI,
Yeah.
but maybe longer term, bigger bets, larger investments?
Yeah. I think the bigger bets we're going to see are for either CMOs and senior leaders that want to be known as that leader that is like on the cutting edge, that is using those technologies. I think that we are going to see more investments and focus in the tools that deliver ROI or that deliver commercial value, because there's just so much like Gen AI, LLM, and agentic that I think is sometimes bolted onto tools. So I think that that's where really understanding as much as you can, the data science behind it. And one of the things that I really loved about the OfferFit leadership was that they talked about AI as just statistics, and really tried to say, like, this is math. It's math done by a computer and it's done at scale. But I think once you have those building blocks, it's just so much easier to spot the nonsense.
So everyone is saying they're AI first, but 6 months in, so many different companies are still just doing batch emails. What do you see as the real barriers? The tech, talent, inertia? Ultimately, what's the real blocker to the concept of real-time personalization?
I think that it probably is the talent and the strategy, and sometimes it's having that creative. So obviously there's so many tools out there that allow you to personalize. I speak with marketing leaders at like very well-known large brands, and they've spoken to me about brand protection and not even wanting to use Gen AI as an org because, God forbid something goes awry, and that is a major issue for these 100-year-old brands. And similarly, I heard a marketing leader from a retailer speak about, they were super excited about Adobe Firefly and they went through all these very cool ways to use it, but said, my organization's not comfortable with us using this. So I think that part of it is really being able to scale the creative and have that on-brand creative and have the control over the message. And without being able to do that, it just is impossible to scale, even if we can have 2 million segments or micro segments.
Makes total sense. So how do you think about building out a marketing team that's both AI fluent, but not completely tech obsessed?
I think that it's a natural instinct as marketers to always want to try the newest technology and tools. But I think
love
that
shiny, bright things. It's so much fun.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to your comment about ABM. When ABM first became hot, everything was about the tech and no one had a strategy. So I think when I'm thinking about building my team, the people that I need and how I want to structure it, I'm really thinking about, what are my goals? What are the foundations of what are the tools that we need to make sure that we're doing the table stakes work? And then picking one or two initiatives that we think that we're really going to, let's make some big swings, but that we want to have those initiatives that we're leveraging our other team members. We're working with sales, we're working with RevOps, and that we have that focused and coordinated effort. So I think that avoiding the bright and shiny, as you said, is really important. Making sure that you have a strategy and then not pivoting to the next thing until you have a solid kind of go, no go of that first one or two initiatives and whether they're working.
Yeah, I like to call it the SOS, the shiny object syndrome, and it's not a good thing.
Yes.
So we kind of asked this previously, but I want to ask it forward looking. So what do you think will be cringe 5 years from now as we think about AI marketing in the landscape?
I think the sea of sameness is one of them, where I've experienced this with going to Email Insider or EEC several years ago. Everybody has that kind of same tagline. It's the same thing. It's comprehensive, seamless experiences. It's intuitive. I think that is one of the things that we're going to look back. This is maybe not a hot take, but I think that there's just so much garbage on the internet. I was watching Last Week Tonight recently, and they actually did a whole segment about AI slop. And I think that we're going to realize, number one, we're spending just an obscene amount of natural resources on this, but also the internet's being polluted by a lot of junk right now. And I think we're going to look back at the like kangaroo holding a plane ticket videos and potentially regret it or just, laugh at ourselves.
I hope we have some sense of humor because it's very laughable.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. I think that there was like I think it was Coke that did an AI ad like several months ago, and the response to it was very negative too. So
Oopsies.
I think it was, just one of those things. People, you have to find the balance.
Oh, for sure. And also that uncanny valley sometimes too.
Mm-hmm.
You got to just think through it.
Right.
Okay. So speaking to your previous experiences at different conferences, you've said before that customer expectations are shaped by everything, not just competitors. So how do brands, and particularly MarTech vendors and tools where you've come from, keep up without chasing trends? It's really hard in these days, this environment.
Yeah. So I think that I always try to shy away from the playbook of like, I know that people now, I have not used clay, so I can't say this, but I see a lot of LinkedIn fodder of like spray and clay, and there's all these playbooks, and this is the right way to do something. Sad. I don't think that there really is a right way to do anything. There's getting the foundations right, doing things at a high quality. But I also just think it's about finding what's unique to your brand too. And, at Movable Ink, we really leaned heavily into events because we saw no two companies used Movable Ink in the same way. And so they really wanted to get inspired. They also wanted to hear from other customers about how did you get the buy-in from your dev team, from your data scientists. And so events were really important for that. And we really created community and connection through that. I think that we used tools that probably many other companies used, but in a way that helped us reach those goals. Similarly, at OfferFit, we had just a ton of PhD level knowledge around machine learning and data science and physics and just a really brilliant team. And so our focus there was just to make that information very accessible and making those really complex terms easier to understand. And so we would do that through our content marketing, and we were looking at interactive content tools. But I think it all comes down to the strategy and what you're doing with it. Because if you're just kind of running the same playbook or, downloading a template of 10 subject lines that work, that's not really authentic to you. And,
Correct.
As we said, like consumers and marketers, consumers and businesses are all getting smarter to how this is all working.
Oh yeah. You mean my button in a different color isn't going to be the entire strategy to, increase pipeline revenue?
Yeah, no, it is. It must be.
All right. We've been talking about the future in a lot of ways now. So what do you see as one huge shift to expect in the MarTech industry in the next 18 months? Because things are moving at a just rapid pace. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you see.
In the time that I've worked in MarTech for several years, I think we've seen ebbs and flows of consolidation of tools, like kind of best in class point tool to consolidation to point tools again. I do think that with all of the acquisitions that are happening, with potentially a shifting economic environment, I do think that we're going to start to see more consolidation. But ultimately, what I've seen at the time too is sometimes those things don't work as well as people expect. And then there's the opportunity for just these really strong entrants to come into the market and solve the problems that, they wish that they could get taken care of in whatever marketing cloud or activation platform they're in, but it's just not there.
Agreed. We're definitely in a contraction period, and it makes sense, not just from a macroeconomic perspective, but to the lack of customer expectations being met across the board. And so I'm hopeful because there's been anywhere from 10 to 15 acquisitions just in the past 8 months. I mean, 2 of your previous companies just in the past 2 months. There's been a lot going on.
And I think that it creates opportunity, but there's also, if those companies get those acquisitions right and the connective tissue is strong, that does make things much better and easier for marketers because you can tie all of these things together. I think what we've seen is, with many legacy players, they'll make these large acquisitions. sometimes to, so they'll acquire competitors or other companies, but if they're not doing the work to bring those platforms together and they're not continuing to innovate on those tools, then I think it creates a problem for their customers.
Agreed. If you agree to an acquisition, you're investing in a company. Now invest in the actual integration. So they're native, best in class, and your competitors can't compete.
Yes.
That's the point of a real acquisition.
Yes, absolutely.
So hopeful that some of the recent changes and acquisitions will become that next best in class platform as a result. All right. Last question. Who is someone else we should have on the podcast?
So I would say on the brand side, I already mentioned her, Steph Work, marketing ops at Paramount. She is brilliant. Courtney Tierney from Papa John's, another one of my favorite marketers.
Oh, okay. She was my account manager back in the day when I was at WeWork.
Really, she's amazing. I love her. And then I would say on the tech side, Kirsty Fraser, she's a senior director of demand gen and international at Movable Ink. And she has 2 decades of amazing MarTech experience. She was at IBM and Silverpop, and she's really seen the evolution. And she's also, I've worked with her for several years. She's always really smart about what are the tests of the new tech? How should we be thinking about demand strategy? What are the different levels of maturity across markets? Like in Sweden, we saw that 10 years ago, but email marketers were less sophisticated than UK. And how do you address that curve? So I think those are my 3 all women, amazing marketers that I would recommend.
Wonderful. I'd love those introductions.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. Where can folks find you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I also recently just opened up my own business for fractional consulting called Vogol Marketing.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Excited to see what things are like as a solopreneur. But you can reach me at jess@vogelmarketing.com.
Perfect.